In 1954, the Canadian military deployed its first and only icebreaker. With it, they would help to secure sovereignty over the Arctic and map the fabled Northwest Passage. It was the first deep-draught ship to transit the Northwest Passage, and the second vessel ever to accomplish this feat in one season. Critical to its mission were its complement of helicopters. It was the HMCS Labrador, and her air wing, the Piasecki HUP-3 retriever, and the Bell HTL-4. As a northern nation, Canada has had a long and mixed history with the Arctic. Exploration of the Arctic archipelago began as far back as the 16th century. Explorers like Frobisher, Sir William Parry, Sir John Franklin, and Captain Robert McClure all searched for the elusive Northwest Passage without success. Transiting the Arctic was desirable as it would connect the Pacific and Atlantic and allow for increased world trade. In 1906, the Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen finally succeeded and would become the first to cross the Northwest Passage using a small fishing boat. Their crossing took almost 3 years. Political interest in the North has always been lacking. First the British and then the new Canadian government saw no commercial value in the North. American whalers, however, did see value in the North, and they were becoming more active in Arctic waters during the turn of the last century. There was concern in Ottawa that the U.S. might try to take the northern archipelago for themselves. This led to the first government-ordered northern sovereignty and surveying patrols. They were carried out by the Canadian ship Arctic beginning in 1904. The patrols were carried out almost yearly through the First World War and on until the Second, although the Arctic herself didn't participate in all of them. In 1940, Canada agreed to an American request to build a series of 13 airfields, called the Northwest Staging Route, to help transport Lend-Lease supplies to Russia. This brought increased American activity in the north, and so the RCMP embarked on a sovereignty patrol of their own. Their ship, the St. Roch, took 2 years to cross the Northwest Passage from west to east. It then took just 86 days to cross a more northerly route back to Vancouver. This amazing achievement helped to secure Canada's claim to the Arctic, but political interest in the North once again faded as the war progressed. When the war concluded and the new Cold War began to develop, the Arctic suddenly became of supreme importance once again. Prime Minister Mackenzie King recognized the importance of maintaining an Arctic capability and ordered that the Navy's new aircraft carrier be made capable of Arctic operations. This led to the acquisition of the HMCS Magnificent, but it quickly became clear that aircraft carriers in general were not well suited to the harsh conditions of the North. The Navy didn't feel comfortable operating thin-skinned ships in ice-filled water, and so an alternative was sought. In 1949, the RCN ordered the construction of a new icebreaker to assert their control of the northern archipelago and keep American interests in check. Ironically, the design they settled on was American. It was based on the Wind-class icebreaker, of which the U.S. Navy operated 7. The American design was modified to suit the needs of the Royal Canadian Navy. The focus for the Canadian version was to be cartographic and scientific. Instead of carrying weapons, it would have an enlarged flight deck and hangar, and carry state-of-the-art scientific and mapping equipment. HMCS Labrador was built in 1951 by Marine Industries of Sorel, Quebec. It was 82 meters long, was 19.5 meters at its widest, and had a draft of 8.8 meters. Its round-bottomed hull was built to be extremely strong. It was composed of 41mm hardened steel plates supported by a strong steel frame. 6 diesel-electric engines turned twin screws tucked underneath the ship. 10,000 horsepower pushed the 6,590-ton ship up to 30 kilometers per hour. It had a crew of 228 sailors of various ranks, but this could be expanded to support scientific missions. The hull had a round bottom, and was designed so that the ship could rise up and break the ice with its weight when moving forward or backwards. There were also pumps that could move water between healing tanks on either side of the ship, allowing it to break ice by rolling up to 10 degrees tilt from side to side. It was equipped with retractable stabilizing fins to control the roll of the ship in open seas. This feature was important to overcome the shortfalls of having a round-bottom hull, and enabling helicopter operations in a greater range of sea states. The Labrador was also equipped with a better radar, communication equipment, and living in recreation quarters as compared with the American versions. The Labrador was fitted with an enlarged hangar and flight deck, capable of operating up to 3 helicopters for transport and reconnaissance duties. Typically 2 Bell HTL-4s and 1 Piasecki HUP-3. The RCN took possession of 3 Bell HTL-4s in 1951 to act as light-duty transports and ice reconnaissance platforms on board the Labrador. In fact, the HTL-4 was the first helicopter ever operated by the RCN. It measured 13.3 meters long and had a rotor diameter of 11.23 meters. The HTL-4 was a derivative of the popular Bell 47, which first flew in 1945. It was extensively modified for military use in cold weather and over water. Instead of skids, the HTLs used a pair of pontoons. In 1954, the RCN also acquired 3 Piasecki HUP-3 retrievers from the US Army to serve on board the Labrador. The retriever first flew in 1948 and was originally designed for the US Navy. It was meant for heavy cargo lifts, as a plane guard for aircraft carriers, and as a passenger transport. It had the distinction of being the first production helicopter to feature an autopilot system. The HUP-3 was a naval upgrade of the original and included larger engines and a streamlined rear section, among other improvements. The HUP-3 was 17.35 meters long, 3.81 meters tall, and had a rotor diameter of 10.67 meters. It had a single 550 horsepower Continental R97546A radial engine, powering contra-rotating meshing tandem 3-blade rotors. The blades could be folded back to assist storage on board ships. It could carry 4 passengers, or lift 408 kilograms either inside the cabin or slung underneath. It performed well in cold weather, and proved to be fairly reliable in the harsh Arctic conditions. HMCS Labrador was commissioned on July 8, 1954, after 2 years of outfitting. At the time, it was the second largest ship in the RCN. Only the aircraft carrier HMCS Magnificent was bigger. Less than a month later, it began operating in the Canadian Arctic. The RCN was concerned with answering 3 questions. 1. Is the Northwest Passage traversable to large ships? 2. Can a combination of icebreakers and large ships successfully build and support a series of northern radar stations? And finally, can submarines operate under the Arctic ice? To answer these questions of national security, the RCN was willing to risk their expensive new icebreaker and her crew. The Labrador's first voyage, with Captain Robertson in command, took her up to Resolute Bay. There they set up navigation beacons and surveyed the port. The HUPs were used to carry the heavy equipment to shore. This opened it up to heavy ships and allowed an airfield to be resupplied more easily. The HTL-4s also performed their roles admirably. It was said that 45 miles of coastline could be surveyed in 4 days with them, as opposed to 10 miles of coastline surveyed in 18 days using tracked vehicles. The HTLs also carried out ice reconnaissance flights to help direct the Labrador's icebreaking efforts. Each airframe would accumulate over 70 hours flying time during the voyage. All maintenance and repairs were done by the highly skilled mechanics on board. Deck handling issues, engine troubles, and hard landings kept them busy. HMCS Labrador then moved to the Kane Basin to drop off an RCMP constable and his family before making their way back through the Lancaster Sound and to Melville Island. There the Labradors met up with its American sister ships, Northwind and Burton Island, who had approached from the west. The 3 ships surveyed the area and collected scientific data together before leaving the other ships and moving through the Prince of Wales Strait and into the Beaufort Sea. When it passed through the Beaufort Sea and into the Pacific, it became the first heavy ship to take the Northwest Passage, and the second to transit in less than a year. Their voyage continued south to the Panama Canal and back to Halifax, making it the second ship to circumnavigate North America, the first being the RCMP St. Roch. In 1955, Canada and the United States began building the Distant Early Warning Line across the Arctic. This massive task initially entailed the construction of 22 radar sites spread across the Arctic from Alaska to Baffin Island. To supply this construction, a sea lift on a scale the North had never seen before had to be carried out. HMCS Labrador would be front and center as Canada's sole ship of the task group, and its leader, Captain Robertson, was placed in command of the American task force. He guided 23 ships to the beaches of Fox Basin. There, a landing craft and the HUP-3s took supplies ashore. The HUPs were used to ferry equipment, deliver mail, and serve as an air taxi moving personnel to shore and between ships. The scope of the DEW line was expanded from 22 sites to 63, demanding an even larger sea lift. 1956 saw the Labrador, commanded by Captain T.C. Pullen, guide 95 ships back to Fox Basin. They took ashore 250,000 tons of cargo and 3 million barrels of fuel in support of the DEW line construction. When not guiding ships, the Labrador carried out further surveys and scientific missions to better understand the area. The 1957 season continued where the previous season left off. They charted the Bell Strait and found a deep water channel into Frobisher Bay. They also supported the sea lift efforts by setting up navigation beacons around Fox Basin. It was found that the HUPs were capable of carrying fully assembled beacons to shore in one trip. The heavy beacons were much easier to assemble on the ship, and the crews were thrilled to find the workaround. July 25, 1957 would serve as a reminder of the dangers of operating in the Arctic. While conducting hydrographic research around Yord Sound in Frobisher Bay, both Bells crashed on a nearby mountaintop while trying to deliver a pair of civilian hydrographers. One rolled onto its side after landing, and the other crashed as a result of high turbulence. All crew members survived, but were stranded on top of the mountain. The HUP was undergoing maintenance at the time, but would be made quickly serviceable to come to the rescue and recover the crew. The wreckage of the two Bells were not able to be recovered, and were left in place having been stripped for parts. After the loss of its two Bells, an additional HUP was brought up from Shearwater to take their place. The Labrador proved that helicopters could operate from ships at sea. Some of the crew involved would later go on to develop the bear trap system used by navies around the world. This opened up a whole new line of thinking within the RCN, the helicopter-destroyer combo. In 1958, the RCN had to make some hard budget decisions. They could keep their fancy icebreaker, or buy more conventional ASW destroyers. The RCN decided to focus on anti-submarine warfare, and so after only 4 years of service, the HMCS Labrador was no more. It was also around this time that the Air Force began production of their own ASW platform, the CP-107 Argus. The HMCS Labrador was transferred to the Department of Transport in 1958. It would later be renamed CCGS Labrador once the Canadian Coast Guard was established in 1962. It worked with the Canadian Coast Guard until 1987, where it continued to do survey and scientific work in addition to its icebreaking and Coast Guard roles. Near the end of its service, the aging hull was entrusted in the Arctic, and her operations were relegated to icebreaking in the St. Lawrence. The ship was taken to Taiwan in 1989, where it was sold for scrap and broken up. With the loss of the Labrador, Canada lost its military presence in the north. In 1958, the same year the Labrador was transferred to the DOT, the USS Nautilus transited the Arctic Ocean submerged via the North Pole. In 1960, the USS Sea Dragon made the first underwater transit of the Northwest Passage. When not embarked on the Labrador, the HUPs were mostly engaged with search and rescue duties, based in HMCS Shearwater, Nova Scotia. Their duties also included cargo and personnel transport, as well as training roles. The airframe suffered from corrosion as a result of exposure to saltwater spray when serving on the Labrador. They had to be constantly washed down with fresh water and covered either in canvas or plastic sheets to slow down the process. This drastically reduced their expected service life. With the transfer of the Labrador to the DOT, the RCN decided to transfer the 3 airframes to VU-33 in Patricia Bay on Vancouver Island. They remained there performing search and rescue and support roles until they were all retired in early 1964. All 3 airframes have been restored and currently serve as museum pieces. The 2 remaining Bells remained in service after the Labrador was transferred. The RCN would later take on an additional 5 HTL-6s to serve as trainers for pilots transitioning onto the Sikorsky HO-4S helicopters. They also served in many other roles, including aerial photography, air rescue, air transport, ship support, spotting for torpedo firing, and other utility roles. HMCS Labrador's contribution to opening up sea navigation in Canada's Arctic were monumental. In 4 years of operating in dangerous and uncharted waters, she never ran aground or was seriously damaged in any way. She explored and charted thousands of kilometers of coastline in some of the least hospitable places in the world. Its faithful helicopters pushed the limits of what was possible with the ship at sea. While almost forgotten today, the HMCS Labrador, Piasecki HUP-3, and Bell HTL-4 helps shape Canadian sovereignty to this day.